started for the day. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll give Jessica time to put it up. I've been rushing her. So great. So if everyone would say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then let's, Linda Bednars, you are our invocation and inspirational words today.
Okay, there we go. Today I was looking online because I thought I'd probably come up with some great words myself, but I really didn't think I could as well as other people have for looking at racial reconciliation. And I found this prayer from the Catholic Charities USA. So if you could please be with me in an attitude of prayer according to whatever your tradition is. God of justice, in your wisdom, you create all people in your image without exception. Through your goodness, open our eyes to see the dignity, beauty, and worth of every human being. Open our minds to understand that all your children are brothers and sisters in the same human family. Open our hearts to repent of racist attitudes, behaviors, and speech which demean others. Open our ears to hear the cries of those wounded by racial discrimination and their passionate appeals for change. Strengthen our resolve to make amends for past injustices and to right the wrongs of history. And fill us with courage that we might seek to heal wounds, build bridges, forgive and be forgiven, and establish peace and equality in all our communities. Amen.
Thank you, Linda. We have quite a few guests today, and I'll start with Ryan Collier.
Stu, he doesn't have a mic.
Oh, well, he gave, that's problematic. What he shared in the chat, the one person that he mentioned, it sounds like he might have his law firm team with him today. But the one person, his partner, Stephanie Palmblad, is here as a guest as well. So welcome, Stephanie. And Ryan, if you're able to get a mic somewhere, we'll share the rest of your names. And then Brenna, you have some guests as well.
I do, thank you. I have a handful, and I don't know who all could or could not make it because pandemic life happens and people, have things pop up. So I'll introduce them and hopefully they're here to enjoy. And if not, maybe they can get a copy of the recording. First, Sarah Sepulveda, who is our client services team member at the H group and actually is just about to begin her CFP studies here pretty soon. So welcome, Sarah. Julie Reinen and Kelsey Cornidi are also joining us. Lisa Joyce, Executive Director of the Pinnacle Theater, is here. And then visiting Rotarian Melissa Lindley, Community Outreach Coordinator with Willamette Valley Hospice, is here. So thank you, all of my friends, for joining me today.
Great. Thank you, Brenna, for bringing your friends along. I haven't seen any club announcements, so Brenna, it's still yours with bell ringers.
Oh, the pressure. Okay.
We love your smiling face on the screen.
Well, this is Salem Rotary Foundation Month, which is the charitable heart of our club, and the generosity of club members and organizations involved with the club have raised over $10,000 in matching funds that will double, triple, and quadruple bell ringer dollars over the next 4 weeks. So in order to take full advantage of all of their generosity, we need to have 12 bell ringers a week. And Sue is very well aware we're going to make a little extra time for the next 4 weeks for bell ringers to do just that. Today, I have 8 so far. So that means I need a couple more. So if you're looking to participate in this for this week and help us meet or exceed that 12 a week goal, here are some things you can do. You can either type your bell ringer into that chat area and it'll be a spontaneous pop-up match and I will read it for you. Or you can use the raise hand button that we've all come to know and love, and I will call on you and you can read it from the floor of your home or chair or wherever you are. So I am going to start things off with a bell ringer from Jane Downing with the Center for Hope and Safety, and she is ringing the bell for the wonderful Rotarians who are matching our bell ringers this week. Ellen Wyatt is matching up to $240 in bell ringers. Thank you, Ellen. Cindy Peck and Eric Templeton with a Marititle. Thank you both. They are super matching for an additional $500, and an anonymous donor is providing a super duper amazing $5,000 match to all of the donations for this month. So lots of money on the table. Thank you all to all of these wonderful and generous people for providing the matching opportunities, and to all the Rotarians who are ringing the bell so we make these matches. This will make a real difference in our community. Please ring the bell. Second bell ringer from Jane. She is wanting to say thank you to all of the Rotarians who have supported the work of the Center for Hope and Safety this year. Your gifts have made it possible for us to help thousands of children and adults fleeing domestic violence and human trafficking this year. So thank you. Ring the bell. All right, next up, Julie Hilty is ringing the bell for family building blocks, and she's sharing a quote. Family building blocks is the fourth leg on our table. This is a quote from Natalie, a mom enrolled in family building block services. And while family building blocks will miss being together to celebrate the success of children and families at their typical luncheon, they are excited to announce their new Dream Builders campaign. So because many of you have been successful in connecting others to the mission of FBB, they are inviting all of us to become a campaign captain. So instead of inviting 9 friends to attend the typical luncheon, they're inviting you to enjoy and share in this really beautiful and touching video of Natalie's story with your friends and family. Let them know that stories like Natalie's illustrating the power of prevention is why our club and so many of its members partner with FBB. In that video, you will meet Natalie's family and learn about their inspiring commitment to staying safe and together. So if you want to be a campaign captain, 3 steps. Let Julie know. So Julie, if you are here, if you can post your email address in the chat, that might be helpful. Then you will share Natalie's story. There's a link on the Family Building Blocks website. And actually, I think I've got it right. Where do I have it? I pulled it up so you can see the website right here. So you'll get this link that you can share to people who are going to attend, and then share their information with Julie so that they can be brought into the FBB supporters group. So ring the bell for family building blocks. Next up, Ron and Kathy Kellerman are ringing the bell for their first grandchild, Hazel Hampson Kellerman, who was born in London 5.5 months ago. She is now crawling and sitting and just started daycare this week, where she loves being around other babies. Her mom and dad can each now get a full day remote work from their bedrooms in London. So their daily Hazelgram on WhatsApp is what makes the separation bearable. And I have another adorable photo to show you. Look at that baby. They are hoping they can hold her someday in person very soon. Please ring the bell. All right, next up, Kim Lemon is ringing the bell on behalf of St. Francis's annual event, the Saddle Up and Support St. Francis. But this is no ordinary event. This is the 10th anniversary, and so they're deciding to throw a tiki party. So this is going to be a virtual tiki party to be held live Sunday, September 13th at 5:30. And it costs nothing to join in the fun, but you do have to register if you want to participate in the event and win some of the fabulous items. They are all available online already, and it's pretty cool. It's just wanted to show you. This is their website with all of these different things, and my eyes were immediately drawn to something called Cocktails with Kim. So I clicked on it, and it is Kim and Rob, the bartender, hosting a cocktail hour. So that sounds like fun. There's already one person watching this item, so hot ticket, as I assumed it would be. So ring the bell for St. Francis and their fundraiser coming up. All right, I would like to ring the bell just in gratitude for all of the friends and families and Rotarians who commented on my recent Facebook post about sharing anti-racism resources. I posted and kind of opened an invitation for people who are willing to share what they're reading and listening to and doing, and that response was just enormous. I was really moved. And in a time when the news is grim at best, it's inspiring to know that there are so many people who are focused on deepening their commitment to this work. So if, like me, you are looking to expand your resource knowledge base, I am going to copy and paste the link to that post in the chat, and it should be public and available whether or not you're a Facebooker. So please ring the bell. And last, we're going to share a couple, Jessica's going to share with us a couple of video bell ringers that people chose to do. And once those two videos play, then we'll go to the chat to take up the other ones that I see popped in while I was reading those. So Jessica, take it away.
Okay. You see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm ringing the bell for Tim Nissen, Secretary Treasurer for the Salem Rotary Foundation. Tim devotes countless hours to not only maintaining the foundation's records, but also the individual records of every one of us who contribute to the foundation, whether it's gifts or bell ringers. He does an amazing job of maintaining all of those records and then reporting to us our contributions to the foundation. In addition, he is keeping all of the records related to the amphitheater project. And for those reasons, I really want to ring the bell for Tim Nissen.
Okay, and there's one more.
I think it's the other one, Jessica, the area one.
Hello, this is Iria Nishimura, Executive Director for Willamette Valley Hospice. I would like to personally invite you to join us for Reflections on the River event. This year it's a virtual event. It will be televised on September 10th at 7:30 p.m. on Comcast Channel 23. CCTV, and also our Facebook page. You can watch it there at 7:30, Willamette Valley Hospice. Today is the very last day to purchase personalized luminaria. They look like these, but they also will have names on them of your loved ones if you want to purchase for $10. Today is the very last day, so go to wvh.org to purchase the luminaria. This year, we're also recognizing and honoring those that we have lost, Oregonians, for COVID-19. Willamette Queen will be illuminated with luminarias to remember and honor them. Welcome. Again, it's Comcast Channel 23 on September 10th at 7:30.
Thank you, Jessica. So that's the cool thing about doing a video bell ringer. So if you have one you want to submit for next week to be part of these, check your eBlast for the information. If you have any trouble with it, let me know. So there are a couple of things in the chat that have come through for matches and such. Let's take a peek. Russ is joining the bell ringer that Jane did. Thank you, Russ McCracken. And thank you, Jessica, for putting the link for how people can pay for their bell ringers in there in the chat. Steve Powers is ringing the bell for today's topic and for the presenter. So Gwen, welcome, and thank you, Steve. Let's see, Roger Kirshner. Yeah, I think you're right. Roger last week did a bell ringer for what he spent in August, what the lunch money that he didn't spend that he saved, and so he's gifting that $60. So we'll catch up on that this week, and it'll get a match thrown in with the deal. So that's a good. Maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Jessica Ickey's my bell ringer for 2 states that I have called home, Wisconsin and Oregon. May we find peace and justice for all. Very nice. Thank you, Jessica. Allison, I would like to offer a bell ringer in celebration of Liberty House Champions for Children virtual fundraising event. It includes a public option, September 17th. The best way to get this information is to make a donation, or on to how to make a donation is to visit the website libertyhousecenter.org. Thank you. And Warren, I see you have a guest and a bell ringer. Double duty.
Yes, I do. It's Linda. I have a guest, my fellow Linda Doller, who is the business manager for Salem Leadership Foundation. And she's a good friend of Gwen's and wanted to come. And I thought, since I didn't get to introduce her as a guest, I actually will make it into a bell ringer as a shout out for Salem Leadership Foundation and the work that they do in, again, bridging justice and bridging the faith community and the needs of the neighborhoods. And Linda is one of those background people that just really keeps things going that you may not see out front. She's just a wonderful person. So I'm glad to have her as a guest today and ring the bell.
Thank you, Linda and Linda. Tim Nissen, I see you have your virtual hand raised as well.
Yes, I want to ring the bell as a treasurer of the Salem Rotary Foundation and to thank you for all of your support. To remind you that one of the least favorite aspects of my former job was chasing down accounts payable. So I would really appreciate it if you'll make good on your bell ringers by either visiting the link on our website and paying via PayPal, or putting a check in the mail to either the club's P.O. box or to my home address. And that way I won't have to harass you with a series of emails and phone calls and eventually sending Guido. So ring the bell.
And that P.O. box is in our e-blast as well from last week. And Holly is throwing in a tag on for John's bell ringer for Tim. So thank you, Tim, for everything you do for our club. We appreciate you very much. Ring the bell. I think that's all I have. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, that's all I saw too. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brenna. Linda Bednarz, I'll apologize to you. Your moniker is Warren, and I thought Warren was being a character to say I have a guest, Linda B. So I misinterpreted. I apologize. So thank you, everybody. Those were great bell ringers, great recognitions. Wanted to pardon me?
Sorry, this is Ozzy. I was trying to get in for a bell ringer. Can you hear me?
We can.
I would like to ring the bell 5 times to thank Brenna for taking over today when I bailed out, and for recognizing the 70+ people who have emailed me to tell me I'd been hacked, 2 of which had sent $200 to the wrong place. And so it was a great week. Thank you, Brenna, for covering for me.
Thank you, Ozzy. I hope
That was 5 times.
Yeah. Did I miss one?
Yeah.
One
Thank
for good
you.
measure. Thank you. And I hope you got your email all squared away again. Adam Kohler wanted me to let folks know that the Good Works Committee is currently looking for hands-on volunteer projects for the year. So if you have projects that you'd like to submit, check out DocDB and connect with Adam. Next item is Doug Parham with the Salem Rotary Foundation moment. Here we go.
Thank you, Sue.
Mhm.
I'm going to review the financial statement for the year ended June 30, 2020 for the Salem Rotary Foundation year. And I'm going to share a screen. to do that. And there. Can everybody see that screen?
Mhm.
Okay. So this is the statement of income and expense for the year ended June 30, 2020. We have on this page our various sources of income you will recognize from weekly meetings. We have the raffle, usually, bell ringers, speaker recognition, and club match. So all of those things center around our weekly meetings. And for the year, that was $18,858. Next, we have contributions, gifts, and fundraising, and those come in major donations greater than $2,000, I think is the mark that Tim uses. Non-major donations less than $2,000 apiece, and the Good Works fundraising event that we annually put on. The subtotal for those was $46,891. I might add that the Good Works event, the $9,000, that's the allocation amount that we get from the club. That's not to say that that whole event makes $9,000, but that's the amount that was pushed over to the foundation. Then we have investment results, and we earn interest on a checking account, and we have investment earnings and gains and losses in a managed account at Pioneer Trust Bank. For the year, that was $26,479, and our total income was $92,228. Okay. The other side of our income and expense statement is the expenses, and I've broken those into three categories four categories of expenses. The Duval Scholarship through Chemeketa Community College Foundation, $2,000. The Jerry Frank Salem Rotary Amphitheater being our major project for the year, $33,000. And then we had small grants awarded through the good work of Adam Kohler and the group that he leads. Small grants totaled $10,000, and you'll be hearing from some of those organizations later in the month. So the total scholarships, support, and grants was $45,000 for the year. And then we had miscellaneous fees and other expenses that totaled $707. Total expenses, $45,707. And then to bring us through to the end of the year, we started the year with $1,058,890. Those the activity for the year brought us $46,521. So we ended June 30, 2020 with a balance of $1,105,411. So I don't know if there are any questions.
Actually, I did have some questions about that, about the small grants process. Can you hear me?
I can.
So do you know what the timeline is for the next round of small grants? When does that application process open? Will the application be available online and so forth?
I'm going to call on the help of my other Rotary Foundation board members. Maybe Tim knows that, or if Adam Kohler is on, maybe he can speak to that.
I'm watching the chat for Adam's response. Oh, February of next year, Vanessa.
I see that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, I have shared that screen with everybody, and now I'm looking to, where do I unshare? I don't see it.
Should be a button at the top of the screen that says stop sharing screen.
And,
Here, I can stop it for you.
There we go.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the update and all the good work of
All
the foundation. So would like to turn it over now to Ken Van Osdale to introduce our guest and our program for today. Hopefully he has, do you have sound, Ken?
You're muted.
You're muted.
He said he might not have sound. Ken, do you want me to read what you sent me? I didn't read lips well right there. Okay, I'm going to go. Ken was able to provide me the his introduction, so I will share that with you all. Today's program is in many ways some new territory for our club. Talking about racism in whatever form can be an awkward, difficult, uncomfortable, and maybe even painful. The discussion today isn't a discussion about politics, certainly not the kind of polarized politics we're seeing today. Racism shows no favor for one side of the political aisle or the other. Instead, it's a discussion to better understand a long-held fundamental flaw in our society and our culture. Structural and systemic racism is about those dimensions of our system in which the public policies, institutional practices, cultural behaviors, and norms work in various, often reinforcing ways to perpetuate racial group inequity. Systematic racism is not something that a few people or institutions or organizations choose to practice. Instead, it has been baked in feature of the social, cultural, economic, and political systems in which we all exist. Today's program is intended to evoke a discussion about systematic racism and how it affects the lives of people in our community. At first, perhaps it is an introspective discussion, me with me, you with you, and us with ourselves. Then, hopefully, a discussion looking outward and forward with each other in Rotary and our community. It is in that spirit I would like to welcome our guest today, Gwen Carr and her granddaughter, Grace Caldwell, who have generously, graciously, and courageously agreed to help initiate this new discussion in our club. To help set some important context for this conversation about racism, Gwen will give us a brief summary of Oregon's racial history. And then she and Grace will have a candid conversation about how they experience the effects of systemic racism in their lives here in Salem, and we'll have the opportunity to listen in, and we will have the opportunity to listen in on that conversation. So first, let me introduce Gwen and Grace. Gwen Carr is our neighbor. She is your neighbor. She is a former colleague and a longtime friend of Ken's and mine. Gwen has lived in Salem for 40 years. She's 72 and retired, but not retiring. She is the mother of Jason Caldwell, who was once operations director at the Boys and Girls Club here in Salem. Jason is now a deputy sheriff with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department. Gwen is also a grandmother to 4 bright and interesting grandchildren, one of whom has graciously agreed to join us today. And that granddaughter is Grace Caldwell. Grace is also our neighbor. She is 16 years old and she's learning to drive. She will be a junior this year at McKay High School, where she is an honors student. Grace is an athlete and she competes in her school's swim and tennis programs. She loves to write. She has a gift for public speaking, and her post-high school plans are pointing to pre-med. Gwen and Grace, thank you for being with us today. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Gwen Carr and Grace Caldwell. So Gwen, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Ken. I'm so sorry we can't hear you, Ken. Oh my goodness, well, that's life. I want to first applaud Rotary for taking this step to understand racism in our community and in our institutions and in our personal lives. I look back, I saw on the website that there was a listing of organizations that Rotary had given to in the last 19 years. And Oregon Black Pioneers was one of the ones listed from 2009. I thought I remembered that. I think that was at a time when we were working on a book on Black history in Marion and Polk County. It's called Perseverance. So thank you again for that grant as well. Racism is a national, it's a societal issue. It will continue to haunt this country, I believe, until we've addressed and rooted out racism in all its forms. And now organizations all over Salem are doing the same thing that Rotary is doing, and that is doing some self-reflection. Business organizations, nonprofits, governmental bodies of all kinds, churches of all denominations and of all belief systems are taking a look at themselves and taking a look at their own history to see how racism has been involved in their organization. My own church, for example, is going through that. And I got to tell you, in the beginning, particularly after their initiation was shortly after the George Floyd situation, I just said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to talk about it. I've had it. There's just been too much of this again and again and again. I'm 72 years old. I've been dealing with this issue all my life. I've been very active in this really from about the time I was Grace's age, speaking at different places, kind of putting my life out there, trying to help people to understand what racism is or isn't, giving my own life experience. And I just thought, I am done with this. It's time for white people to step up and figure it out for themselves if they haven't by this time. One of the things, though, that kind of turned me around, I was reading a book by John Lewis, in which he talks about good trouble. If you haven't read that book, it's called Walking with the Wind. And in it, he talks about our responsibility as citizens to get in what he calls good trouble. And I guess for myself, I figured out after a lot of reflection and prayer that I'm really not done with this. I still have something to give, something to learn, and something to contribute to attacking and addressing racism in this country. And I intend to do that. I think we've come to recognize that our racist attitudes are embedded in every aspect of our lives and our culture. It rears its head in how we make decisions, choices we make, how we treat each other, how we perceive current events, how we manage each other, how we do public safety. It's here to stay, at least for a while. So the question becomes, how did we get here? And so I want to do a brief PowerPoint presentation that sort of talks about how we got here in Oregon. You know, most of the time when we talk about racism, we tend to think that it's a Southern problem. We want to talk about Alabama, Mississippi, or we think it's an urban problem. So we want to talk about New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. But today I want to talk about Oregon. This racism isn't something that just happened a long, long time ago in some other place. It happened here, it happened a long time ago, it's still happening. So I want us to kind of acknowledge that by taking a look back before Grace and I kind of talk about what's going on today. So I'm going to share a screen, see if I can do this right. Okay, and one more. Oops. Okay, here we go. Okay, issues of race in Oregon go back all the way to the beginning of the development of Oregon. Some of you may not know, but there were Black people, people of African descent in Oregon as early as the 1700s. And some historians will tell you that likely prior to that, because of all of the trading that was going on, and these ships that were exploring the Western United States, the Western coast of the United States, included a lot of multicultural crews from all over the world. But we know that in 1788, there was a man of African descent who was on board a ship that put in at Tillamook. So we know that that is the earliest documented instance we have of a Black in Oregon. We also know, as I mentioned though, that like other states, Oregon wrestled with this issue of Blacks and slavery from the beginning. And in the slide, it talks about how in our earliest of times as a state, when we were a provisional government and then a territorial government, and then we became a state in 1859, Oregon has wrestled with this issue of what do you do with Blacks who want to come here or who are coming here. And so from the beginning, from 1844, there were Black exclusion laws, which said in effect, if you're Black and already here, you need to go. And if you are Black and considering coming here, or your slave owners are considering bringing you here, there's no place for you here. So from the very beginning, it was very obvious that even though Oregon said it was anti-slavery and came on as a free state, it was also very anti-Black. And that's kind of, it's kind of a hard thing to understand how you could have both of those things happening at the same time. But in fact, it was. Now, and so when I say to people that there was slavery in Oregon from the earliest of times, people say they couldn't be. There was no slavery in Oregon. This was a free state. If you really want to get into the weeds of slavery in Oregon, this is an excellent book to read by Greg Noakes. It's called Breaking Chains. And he talks about Oregon's history of slavery. Now, when we say slavery in Oregon, I always tell people, particularly people my age, it wasn't your Gone with the Wind type of slavery, where you had big hoop skirts and huge plantations with thousands and thousands of slaves. These were poor farmers who came to Oregon who might have had one or two slaves along with them and brought them out here in spite of the laws that said that you couldn't have Blacks in Oregon. They simply brought them anyway. And the range of what was happening as a result of that went from soup to nuts, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. This is a map that we use a lot in Oregon Black Pioneers to illustrate the presence of Blacks all over the state of Oregon, primarily as early in the 1800s. And if you notice, this is just kind of a representative visual to show you that there were Blacks all over the state. Never very many. Even now, a lot of you know there's only about 2% of the population of Oregon is Black. And that was about the same percentage, frankly, as back in the 1800s, but they were all over the state. A lot of times we think that was only, there were only Blacks in Multnomah County, around Portland, or, as a result of the railroads, or they know about Vanport with the coming of the shipyards during World War II. But Oregon Black history goes back much, much farther than that. I'm not going to talk about each one of these folks, but I'm going to tell you about a few of them because they illustrate, when I said it went from soup to nuts, they illustrate the variation of how Blacks were treated, even with these laws. This is a picture of a woman named Mary Jane Holmes Shipley Drake. She was married twice, but the important part of her name is really that first name, the Holmes case. And the Holmes case is Oregon's only slavery legal action that we know of. Now, there might have been others, but this is a very famous case. And in fact, Greg Noakes' book started with some research into this case. In this case, her family, her father and mother and several children, were promised that if they came to Oregon with their family, with their slave-owning family, then they would be freed once they got to Oregon, because after all, Oregon was a free state. Well, that was partially true. The slave owner actually freed the mother, the father, and several of the children. Mary Jane at the time was the youngest child. She was among those who was not freed. And eventually, without going into a whole lot of detail, the Holmes family sued to get their children back, which is a very unusual legal case, but it's a very interesting legal case. So that's one variation where they were brought here, they were promised they would be free. Some of them were, some of them were not. This is another slave who was brought here. And in his situation, Louis Southworth, he had to earn his freedom. And we found in doing the research that his freedom cost him $1,000. And he was able to get that by playing the fiddle. He was all over Oregon and even down into Wairika, California, playing the fiddle, working in mines, and those kinds of things, coming back into this area and earning his freedom. This is a young woman who had been given to her slave owners as a wedding gift. Now, when I tell this in situations where I'm dealing with elementary school kids, they say, how could she be a wedding gift? You know, she's a person. And I have to say, yeah, that's true. We believe that now, but at the time, slaves were treated as property. And so even when you look back into property lists of slaves, you'll find the number of horses, the number of cows, the number of slaves. And so it was not out of the ordinary for one to be given as a wedding gift. So that's how she made it to Oregon. She had been given as a gift to this family coming out to Oregon, and they end up in Albany. She's eventually freed. She stays there. She marries a man who's a blacksmith in Oregon, and they make a life for themselves in Albany. So that kind of gives you a variation. Now, here's one more variation I think that's important. This man was brought here as a slave. He was freed, and they settled around Oregon City. Not only was he freed, but he was actually given property in the Oregon City area. He becomes a prosperous man. And if you read his obituaries, you find that ultimately he owned property in Oregon City, in Salem, and in Central Oregon. So when I say it went from soup to nuts, you get an idea by looking at just these four people, what I'm talking about. Now, during that time, even though you had slaves being brought here and living here in spite of the laws, you also had the beginning of segregation here. A lot of people don't know this, but Oregon actually had 4 segregated schools. One here in Salem, and in fact, if you know where Macy's is now, it used to be Myron Frank, right there on that corner. That's where the colored school was back in 1867. So when we say there was no segregation in Oregon, that's not totally true. Another group that reared its head in the 1920s here was the Ku Klux Klan. It was a very important political group here in Oregon during that time. And this is it's actually a excerpt from a headline in the Portland paper that talks about, and you can see there, they are making no bones about the fact that they are an organization, a powerful political organization that's meant to influence everything that was going on in Oregon during that time. They didn't survive very long, thank goodness, and they went after not only Blacks, but also Catholics, Jews, other non-whites that were in Oregon. At one time, Oregon had the largest clavern west of the Mississippi. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow too, because again, we tend to think of these groups as only being in the South. But Oregon, you would have to add Oregon's name to that list. I show this because this is a local girl that was impacted by the Klan as it was here. Carrie Hessel was a student at what was then Salem High School. That's her high school picture there. You see the 21s in the corner. She moves on to Oregon State, becomes the first African-American student to graduate from Oregon State in 1926. But at the same time that was happening, the Klan was trying to intimidate her family and other Black families in Salem. And so they put flyers on their doorstep with signals and, that they were the Klan and they needed to get out of town. And so while she was at Oregon State trying to get educated there, the Klan actually drove her family out of Salem and they ended up in Portland. She has a whole story too that I won't get much into right now, but she wasn't originally able to stay on campus because there wasn't any housing that allowed Blacks and white to intermingle. And so she had to live off campus. But just a few years ago, that building there was a building that's at Oregon State that was actually named for her. So we think that's very interesting. Now, this is an example of what was going on around us too, both in Salem and in Portland. The we cater to white trade only. It was very obvious that Blacks had to live in a segregated society. And then here are some of the things that are kind of leading us up to now. Both in Portland and in Salem, there were restrictive covenants which said that realtors could not sell to Black families. There was redlining, so that if you were trying to get a loan or move to a certain area and you were a Black family, you weren't allowed to do that. There are what's called sundown laws. And I always say we should have been calling these sundown practices, because we haven't been able to find any evidence that there were actually laws that were voted upon, you know, in different areas. But we do know that it was a practice, and Blacks knew about it and whites knew about it, that in a lot of the towns in Oregon, if you were Black, you needed to be off the streets when the sun went down. That was what the whole sundown theory was about. And now we kind of move into what's now called systemic or institutional racism and microaggressions. I thought that was kind of interesting, because being around as long as I have, you know, back in the 60s, we weren't really talking about systemic institutional racism, except as it applied to the laws that were in effect at the time, that were in effect legalized discrimination. And we weren't talking about microaggressions, because that's kind of a new term as well. So today what we're going to talk about, what Grace and I are going to talk about, after kind of looking back in the past a little bit, we're going to talk about what's going on now. So I want to stop the share. And I want to introduce my granddaughter, Grace. We're going to talk about, just have like a little grandma to granddaughter talk about our lives and what's going on with racism. So this is your opportunity, Rotary Club, to kind of be a fly on the wall. Now, we've identified some things we're going to talk about, but we haven't really scripted this, so we don't know exactly who's going to say what and that kind of thing, but we have some ideas of points that we want to talk about. So Grace, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your family?
Okay, so I'm from Salem. I'm biracial, so my mom is white and my dad is Black. My mom's like Swiss and Irish, but I just say she's like European mainly. And then my dad is African American. And then I go to a I think it might be one of the most diverse schools probably in Oregon. I go to McKay High School. I had the percentages. We have 63% Hispanic, 24% white, and 3% Pacific Islander, and then 2% African American. So it's very little.
Okay.
And then I know you're from LA. So would you like to kind of go in, because you probably have a different story. So would you?
Yeah, my story is a little different. However, I just got the signal. We've got like 10 minutes. And so
I was like,
we're going to jump right into some other things. Okay. So with what's going on right now, Grace, you know, with the George Floyd thing and some of the things that are happening, you know, what do you think about those things? What are some of your thoughts?
I think
going on
with the George Floyd, along with like all the other videos and stuff that has been filmed, my first reaction is obviously sadness. I mean, you don't want to be watching that stuff and then see people that look like you getting harassed and violated. And that mistreatment has gone over for years. But at the same time, I've seen it so much that I've kind of became desensitized to it, to that behavior. And I know there's people that keep count of the victims and stuff, which is great. But even if those police officers were held accountable and charged, I'm just thinking, like, in the grand scheme, how did that change the system? Because that's like the main, when we do the protests and stuff, that's what we really want to target.
Okay.
So what do you think about it?
Well, like you, I was very angry, for one thing. I guess because I've seen it so much over the years. There's so many names. I've stopped trying to remember what the names are. anymore.
Yeah.
But it's very upsetting because you think you're to a point where things have been resolved. I know when I was your age, we thought that once those old races died and we kind of start doing things together, everything was going to be fine. And then we look up and here it's raising its head again. Well, let's jump to something else here. What, you know, we talk about systemic racism. What do you think are some examples of systemic racism or microaggressions?
So like when we talk about, I'm gonna talk about microaggressions first because it's what I have up. So microaggressions, let me define this first because we had it's an insensitive comment or action based on stereotypes of a marginalized group. So this is something I see more than like having someone call me the N-word or like physically harass me. I see this more often. I think a lot of people could agree with this. So I'll get comments of like, is your hair real? Or can I touch your hair? Or you take high level classes? Cause it's like surprising to them. And I'm just like, I've been in school for like 10 plus years. Yeah.
So do you get some people say, oh, you're so articulate?
Yes.
Do they say that?
Yeah. I'm sure you get it too. And then another thing is I don't do basketball. That's a really big stereotype, basketball and stuff. Like I do swimming and tennis, which are like the last sports you probably still like associate me with. And when I do the sports, I'm usually the only like Black person there. And yeah, it's just.
So do people ever say anything to you? I know you travel around to different schools.
Yeah, so one time I was at Sprague High School, which is also in Salem, and I was playing tennis, and I'm not like amazing, like I'm not the best tennis player out there, but this lady continued talking to me like I was like a trophy player, and she talked to me for like 10-20 minutes, and I was like okay talking at first, and then she continued telling me how good I was and stuff, and I was like, I'm not that good, like I'm like pretty mediocre.
And do you think she was doing that because why? I mean, why do you think she was doing that?
I think it was a mix between she was interested in the fact that I was a African-American tennis player. And you don't see a lot of Black tennis players just playing tennis. And she was probably like surprised and she just had a lot of questions for me personally. Okay. Yeah. All
right. Now, a big term that everybody sees all over the place is Black Lives Matter. What does that mean to you? What does that term Black Lives Matter mean to you?
So Black Lives Matter to me, I feel like this gets like skewed sometimes because Black Lives Matter isn't a political statement because you can't justify racism and it's not proving any other race less. It's just saying right now, as of 2020 and all the years before, Black lives are like the marginalized group right now. And in actuality, this movement is advocating against racial injustice and brutality that Black lives have faced for years. So that's like how I stand with it. And I know you feel similar. Would you like to talk about your stance?
Well, we're kind of running out of time. So I think we're more interested in what you think than what I think.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to move to something else. So, okay, along with Black Lives Matter, though, what's gotten hooked up in it is all this violence that's taking place in Portland. So what do you think? How do you feel about this violence that's happening?
Well, I think at first I was okay with it, right? I was like, okay, we're having protests. People are really excited for change, which I was also a little bit upset because it's like, why did it take so many people? Why did it take people dying on film for people to understand that this is still an issue? But I was excited for it. And then like right now, once I start seeing the riots and stuff, I realized that people are beginning to miss the whole point of the protests because I think it's really turned more into a war than an actual movement because people are utilizing this as a platform to express their own personal like political stances on issues outside of racism, which really shouldn't be it. I mean,
yeah, to me, I think the violence has become a distraction, and which is unfortunate because now people are talking about the violence that's going on with the rioting, but they're not talking about the violence that was perpetrated on these young Black men on a consistent basis. And so that kind of makes me angry about that whole thing. So we've got a lot of people listening here. So if you were going to leave a message with your white neighbors, what would you tell them that they need to be doing right now to be a part of the solution rather than a part of the problem?
I would say, well, I'd obviously say educate yourselves. Feel free to ask questions. I feel like talking about race is just uncomfortable. And that kind of relates back to like the school curriculum, how we don't really talk about it at all unless we're talking about like slavery and stuff. You mentioned one time don't mistake anti-police brutality with anti-police. So you could also talk about police brutality. Yeah, my main thing is just educate yourselves. I mean, there's videos all over. You can ask questions. I mean,
yeah, I agree. I think it's time for white people to be talking to each other about some of these things. And maybe this is getting back to how I started this. That I was feeling like I was fed up with trying to explain everything and have to take responsibility for everything. You know, this is a white problem. This is not our problem. We've been living this. White people need to stand up and really start talking to each other about what's going on. Talking in their families, in their churches, in their businesses. You know, I used to say that I didn't care if white people were prejudiced as long as they didn't keep me from getting where I need to be.
Yeah.
You know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But now I've come to realize that they go together. You know, if you're prejudiced, if you have these feelings,
right.
You know, if it's systemic, it bleeds over into everything, into every action, every decision that you take. You know, and in the end, I don't want you guys to be fearful. You know, when I say you guys, I mean you and your brothers and sisters. I don't want you to be fearful. I don't want you to be intimidated by any of this stuff. But I don't want you to be naive either. I want you to be free to pursue your dreams, whatever they are, without having to worry about fighting through prejudices and, you know, having self-doubt about how people feel about you or how you're being treated, or will you be able to buy a house, or will you be able to move forward in the thing that you want to do. And so even though I might sound like I'm kind of negative right now, I'm also very hopeful. You know, our people, I tell you guys this all the time, our people have survived slavery, Jim Crow, legal discrimination, and we are going to survive this too. My only prayer at this time is that 50 years from now, you won't have to have the same conversation with your granddaughter. That is really how I want to leave this. I think that's important for all of us, whether you're black or white, that we're able to move on with this. So I think we've run out of time, and thank you, Grace.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Grace. That was wonderful, just to the history and the edification you provided us, Gwen, but also just the conversation with grandma and granddaughter. That was wonderful and very heartfelt, and that was important for all of us. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you have a chance to look through the chat, because Gwen and Grace, because you're getting some exceptional kudos from our membership for the conversation. So thank you so much for this important conversation.
Thanks.
I wanted to let you know there's so many comments complimenting you. So real quick,
famous now.
You're famous now, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Brenna wanted me to let folks know that there were 22 bell ringers, and today we raised $440 for Salem Rotary Foundation. So thank you, everybody. So once again, Gwen and Grace, thank you for caring and coming and chatting with us and educating us and giving us things to reflect on and to start to talk about, continue to talk about. It was really important. So thank you. Next week we have Bruce Anderson will be our program chair, and we'll have Eric Gablinks, who's the head of Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, will come and talk to us. So that will be next week. So with that, I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Take care.